Good morning. Happy Easter. My name is Ann Marie Beale, minister of Unity Church of the Cumberlands. We have a special treat today. At the end of my message, Kelly and Gail will sing and play Lord of the Dance, so be sure to stay tuned for that. You know, the Easter story is a lot like the Christmas story. It's retold over and over again. Almost every culture in the world has a death and resurrection story. Now that doesn't diminish the story of Jesus. It shows its importance as a story that is unfolding in all of us, resurrecting to our higher divine nature. Let's look at the story for a moment. Can you imagine that Easter morning so long ago when Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, and Salome were walking to the tomb of Jesus? They wanted to anoint his body. And in order to do that, they had to roll away the heavy stone that blocked the tomb's entrance. And I can just imagine the conversation. Which one of us is going to roll away the stone? I'm not going to roll away that stone. Are you going to roll away the stone? Can you imagine how heavy it must have been? Well, when they arrived at the tomb, the stone was already rolled away. Jesus had risen. And so let's look at the symbols in that story, knowing that they are symbolically the story of our own resurrection into our higher divine nature. The three symbols are the tomb, the stone that was rolled away, and the time it took, 3 days, for Jesus to resurrect. Now the tomb is a quiet place, an inner place where I go to for prayer and meditation. It has a do not disturb sign on it. Some people call it the secret place of the Most High. It's where we resurrect our Christ nature by becoming aware through prayer and meditation of our union with the divine. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. I don't mean I'm God, come worship me. I mean I'm an aspect of the divine, an extension of divine love, as we all are. But we can't know that until the stone is rolled away from our consciousness. And that stone can be anything that blocks our awareness of our connection with divine love. It begins with the belief or thought in separation, that we could possibly be separate from the divine. And from there we can have all kinds of thoughts that block the awareness of that presence, like judgment, guilt, anger, resentment, unforgiveness. All those stones can block our deep connection. Most of my stones in my life have been about fear. And I have had to walk through many fears to roll away the stone of fear so that I could live a more expanded life, so that I could be more than I ever thought I could be. I once heard a saying, I believe it was Earl Warren, who said, "Everything I did in my life that was worthwhile, I caught hell for." And I laughed when I heard that, because I've often stepped outside of the status quo, colored outside of the box, as the old saying goes, and was often judged for that. You know, there's an old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, I'm not sure that's true. Words can hurt and judgments can hurt. But we have to make sure they don't turn to stone in us, that we don't allow that to block our awareness of love's presence. Judgments can turn into stone. So would you repeat with me if you're comfortable? I choose to roll away my stone and allow Christ to rise in me. All right. Let's look at the second symbol. The symbol of time. 3 days that Jesus was in the tomb. And that represents the three movements of consciousness, the three movements that our mind has to make. You know, there's an old saying, if you continue to think what you've always thought, you'll continue to get what you've always got. It's kind of like the movie Groundhog's Day. Remember Bill Murray in the movie? He wakes up every morning and the same thing happens every day. Do you ever feel like your life is like Groundhog's Day? Well, something has to move in our consciousness to shift our reality into something different. Now, my favorite example of this is a true story. It's the story of David Paladin. He's a very famous Navajo artist. And when he was growing up on the reservation in Arizona, he left the reservation at age 15 and joined the Merchant Marines, where he served with people from all over the world. Well, then World War II broke out, and each of his friends in the Merchant Marines had to go to their own country to serve in World War II. One of his friends happened to be German. And so when David went into the military then for World War II, he became a code breaker. And most of you know that the Navajo language was used as a secret code back then to fight the Nazis. What better language that so few people knew to use as a secret code? Well, David was eventually captured and tortured by the Nazis. He was tortured so much at one point, they actually nailed his feet to the floor. Well, he was broken, and they eventually put him on a train for the extermination camps. And wouldn't you know it, his old friend from the Merchant Marines was there and happened to see him. And he saved him by putting him on a different train. None of the trains led to a good experience, but at least it wasn't the extermination camp. And so he spent the rest of the war there in that camp. And World War II ended and they found David. He was so broken he was in a coma by then. And they sent him to America to a VA hospital. He eventually came out of his coma. And he only had one request. He felt like he was dying. But he said, you know, I want to go back to the reservation one more time. I just want to see my home, my reservation, one more time. And so they did that. They sent him back to Arizona, to the Navajo reservation. When his friends and family saw him, they were horrified at who he had become. This was not the same man they knew. This was not the David that had left at age 15. So they had a council meeting and they made a plan. They took him out to a lake. They took off his leg braces, tied a rope around him, and threw him out in the center of the lake. Wow. With friends like that, who needs enemies, huh? But there's more. They shouted from the shore, David, call back your spirit. Your spirit is no longer in your body. If you can't call back your spirit, we'll let you go. No one can live without his spirit. Your spirit is your power. Call back your spirit. Later, David said that was the hardest thing he'd ever had to do. For as he was drowning, all he could see were the Nazis that had tortured him. But he prayed to be released from that anger and made that act of forgiveness. He later lived and, of course, went on to become a famous artist. But the point of this story is he had to go through 3 movements of mind in the same way that Jesus did. The first movement is non-resistance to your experience. It's so common for any experience that we find ourselves in that's uncomfortable to resist it, to fight it, to try to control it. No wonder why it took one whole day in the tomb to release that point of non-resistance, to let go. The second movement in mind is to acknowledge the pain and allow it to pass through. You know, some people ask, did Jesus, being the great being that he was, feel pain? Some people say not. My 25-cent version is that there was pain, but he allowed it to pass through. He didn't hold on to it. He didn't allow it to turn to stone. And then he forgave. He said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. in the same way that Dave Palatine had to forgive as he was drowning in the water. The third movement of mind is then accepting and receiving the blessing from every life experience. And as you do that, you're able to resurrect to a higher life experience. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said the resurrection is the lifting up of the whole man into the Christ consciousness. The whole man is spirit, soul, and body. Again, that three movements: spirit, soul, and body. The resurrection lifts up all the faculties of the mind, and the renewal of the mind makes complete transformation of the body, so that every function works in divine order, and every cell becomes incorruptible and immortal. So this Easter, roll away the stone so that Christ can resurrect in you. If you're comfortable, repeat with me. Let the mind be in me that was also in Christ Jesus. Let the mind be in me that was also in Christ Jesus, alive, awake, and risen. Now, instead of my usual meditation today, we have the treat that we promised you. Kelly and Gail will be singing and playing. And before that, though, let's do our love offering that we do every Sunday. We simply hold our offering in our hand and say our offertory blessing. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am grateful. We appreciate your support through this time of social distancing. You can go to unitycookville.org and hit the donate button, or you can mail your offering to 823 East 10th Street, Cookeville, Tennessee, 38501. And so now, thanks to Michael's technical skills, we will hear Kelly and Gail.